Manchester, 1996. One of countless bombings and other terrorist-like attacks that dotted the British Isles over a 30-year period of unrelenting violence and destruction in the Northern Ireland conflict, more commonly called the Troubles. The Troubles were a sectarian conflict kindled by steadily increasing tensions between native Catholics who had lived in Ireland for over 1,200 years and the newly settled Protestants, who had been there for only 4 centuries and were favored by the British for their ties to England and Scotland. This conflict boiled over into a countrywide struggle that left more than 3,600 Irish and British dead, with nearly 1,900 of those being civilians, increasing the divisions between Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland to an unprecedented level. But eventually, the resolution of the Irish Troubles broke both ethnic and literal barriers that divided the Catholics and Protestants of Northern Ireland. Since the first settlement of the British Isles, ethnic and cultural tensions had existed between the English and Irish, resulting in countless conflicts between them. In 1536, the growing Kingdom of England was finally able to conquer all of Ireland. Soon afterwards, in 1609, due to British conversion to Protestantism, King James ordered settlers to move into Ireland in order to convert the island as well. However, his efforts were only successful in a small region called Ulster in the north of Ireland due to Ulster's lack of population and development and its proximity to Britain. 3 centuries later, in 1916, tensions between the Irish and British exacerbated when Irish drafts were enacted without the consent of the Irish during World War I. This set off the Irish Republican Uprising, where Catholic Irish Republicans in the South rebelled against the English government, while the Protestants in the North remained loyal to their crown. The rebellion was not successful, but eventually resulted in the Anglo-Irish Treaty of 1922, resulting in the freedom of all of Ireland, except Ulster, from the United Kingdom. However, in Northern Ireland, the predominantly Protestant population outvoted the Catholic minority, who desired to leave due to their unequal treatment in Northern Ireland.
They had challenges and problems trying to find jobs, trying to find housing, and really trying to advance, because Protestants controlled all the levers of power and held most of the economic power.
This unequal treatment eventually resulted in the creation of the Northern Ireland Civil Rights Association. NICRA tried to emulate the civil rights movement in America by organizing street marches from Belfast to Derry. On October 5, 1968, a march was organized in the city of Derry, but was deemed illegal by the government. When the impassioned protesters would not call off the march, the Royal Ulster Constabulary, or the RUC, who were comprised of biased Protestants, were brought in to stop them and ultimately dissolved the march. Committed to their cause, the Catholic protesters organized the second march at Derry on New Year's Day 1969. This time, however, the protest was not banned because the Northern Irish government wanted to prevent the violence that would have resulted from denying Catholics the right to protest. Yet a group of hardline Protestants still harassed the unresisting protesters. The biased RUC still decided to side with their own Protestants in order to stop the violence and attack the protesters, injuring many of them. The RUC was even praised for its handling of a difficult situation. Finally realizing that the government had no intention of fixing the inequality in Northern Ireland, radical Catholics began a movement for the reunification of Ireland, and they were called nationalists. These nationalists gained support from a paramilitary force from Southern Ireland called the Irish Republican Army, or the IRA. The IRA used guerrilla tactics such as bombings and assassinations against both Protestant innocents and fighters to pressure the British to give in to their demands of Irish reunification. On the other hand, Protestants who wished to stay in the UK were called Unionists. They joined loyalist paramilitary groups, only perpetuating the divisions already in place. But for these loyalists, they felt that the IRA was a serious danger to the fragile union of Great Britain, and that they must be stopped at any cost. In hopes of stopping the growing violence, the Northern Irish built peace walls, which were 45-foot metal barriers topped with barbed wire. Peace walls, placed in between Catholic and Protestant neighborhoods, were highly effective in mitigating violence. However, the peace walls also literally established barriers between the two groups and segregated them from each other. Due to their effectiveness, some peace walls remained even after the end of the Troubles. They still sneak across Belfast, Derry, and other small towns. Furthermore, strict internment rules that allowed suspects to be detained and arrested without a trial were introduced, but these were only ever enforced against Catholics. Out of the 342 people arrested under these new laws, only 1 was a Protestant. This sparked mass outrage among the nationalist population, leading to only more unrest and violence, which culminated on an infamous day, January 30th, 1972, also known as Bloody Sunday. Bloody Sunday was a massacre in which a peaceful protest escalated when protesters started pelting Protestant troops, causing the British Army to kill 14 protesters in Derry, not unlike the Boston Massacre. As a result, the IRA saw a spike in recruitment afterwards, going from around 1,200 members to its peak of 1,500. Additionally, the tensions between the Catholics and Protestants had only escalated even further. Bombings and assassinations became much more common for both sides, yet the Unionists weren't blamed due to Protestant bias. Tit-for-tat killings continued throughout Northern Ireland for the rest of the decade. One of the grimmest of these killings was the Kingsville Massacre in 1976, where a member of the IRA stopped a work bus, lined up the Protestant workers, and executed them, killing 10 and injuring 1, while letting their Catholic co-worker leave unharmed. Finally, in a desperate attempt to end the Troubles, the Anglo-Irish Agreement was signed in 1985 by the United Kingdom, the Government of Northern Ireland, and the Republic of Ireland. The agreement stated that the UK would retain Northern Ireland, but that the Irish Republic would be consulted on administrative matters such as security and legal issues. However, the Unionists vehemently opposed this treaty as they saw power sharing as too extreme of a concession. The ceasefire was eventually broken by IRA bombings, which never stopped due to certain more radical IRA members believing that negotiation would always fail. These bombings took countless lives and damaged billions of dollars worth of property. But rather than further dividing people, they only increased the desire for peace and reconciliation. Even though officially the ceasefire had ended, negotiations continued throughout the bloody bombings. Eventually, the Good Friday Agreement was agreed upon and signed by all parties on April 10, 1998, as a last-ditch effort to stop the fighting once and for all. A last-ditch effort to stop the deadly conflict that claimed thousands of innocent lives. It once again created a system in which Britain kept Northern Ireland, but had a power-sharing agreement between the UK and Ireland. This accord led to an end of the Troubles of Northern Ireland. The formation of the new system, though, was delayed until 1999, when the IRA finally promised to lay down arms, realizing that peace was more important. Tensions eased between the Protestant and Catholics, the British and the Irish, but the wounds still needed to be healed. By the end of the Troubles, the death toll had reached over 3,000. The Troubles intensified divisions between neighbors based on religion, ethnicity, and nationality. Everyday people in Northern Ireland had their lives changed as a result of the Troubles, as tens of thousands were displaced from their homes, or even killed.
Yeah, sure. It was always in the back of their minds. I mean, it meant that if they were going into the stores in town, if they were going to the shops, sometimes they would be stopped and searched. Oftentimes they'd be harassed by the army or the police, especially if they were coming from a Catholic neighborhood. It meant that there were no restaurants that were open at night, no bars, no clubs, no place to go. Families that were torn apart. Families that lost loved ones, who lost kids or parents or brothers or sisters. So I think what's oftentimes ignored is the human cost, and just how awful the violence could be, and how that really impacted the people of Northern Ireland.
Peace walls showed how everyday people were affected and split into groups. But the desire for peace and ending of violence was able to break the barriers between the Catholics and Protestants. One group, the Peace People Organization, was founded in the wake of tragedy during the Troubles and was created for the sole purpose of preventing the violence. The now international human rights group helped break the barriers and ethnic divisions in Ireland by supporting smaller peace groups, encouraging cross-community dialogue, and holding anti-violence rallies. Time has healed some scars, but Brexit may rip open old tears.
But if there's a hard Brexit, it means that there has to be border posts and custom control. There have to be uniforms, on the border, and that's going to create tension. For hardcore nationalists, it's going to, they might want to start taking pot shots at these people in uniforms. So it is something that people are afraid of.
Overall, the scars left behind by the Troubles still haunt the Catholics and Protestants of Northern Ireland, through the literal and metaphorical barriers that were built between them. However, those same barriers are being broken as the two groups become one.